All right, Raj. So tell me about yourself.
Okay. I've been working on Android for about 10 years. And before that, prior to 10 years, I was working on different front-end systems and back-end systems for about 6 years. So total of 16 years of mostly corporate enterprise development. And last maybe 3 or 4 years, it's more about trying to get like looking at products that holistically instead of just one specific app or product. So last few years, I've been working on like mobile 5G internet stuff. But before that, I worked from at Android to writing components like basic components to developing enterprise libraries for use throughout the company for different apps, integrating different apps. Yeah, that's about
Got it. Yeah. Okay. So do you have your favorite drawing tool?
Yeah, I have the Excalibur Draw open.
Can you share it so we can see?
Yes. Can you see it?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. So today we're going to be designing Instagram.
Instagram. Okay. Okay. Instagram. Is it? Are we trying to replicate all the features? Are we working on any specific feature?
Let's do this. You can see this what's called feed, Instagram feed, and you can like posts, you can share posts, and you can see comments.
Like the post, share the post, and you said share the view the comments or just
yeah, you can click on post and open it and see comments.
Okay, see the comments. Okay. Okay. Did you say share post? I guess it's
yeah.
Okay. All right. Now, if in terms of how is it when we working on this product, is it something that we'll be building from ground up? Let's say we didn't know about Instagram, we call it something else. Would it be a product that we're building from scratch to see it as a proof of concept?
Imagine we're a company, we're trying to build an Instagram clone, and pretty much the same audience and same everything.
Okay. How many, what would be the initial target audience volume? Would we be launching only to specific limited set of users? Are we gonna be public about it and do some sort of invite system, or?
No, it's pretty much the same audience as for original Instagram. So it's worldwide, and it could be launch? At least like 1 billion people.
Okay. Right. Okay. And the availability, I assume, just like any social app, availability would be the key for this app. Main goals and replication, consistency would be second priority.
Can you tell me more about what you mean by availability and consistency?
When I say availability, because this is a social app, that means when you open it, it has to work. The feed has to load. There is no, I mean, even if it's 1 hour old data or data is not accurate or is not what currently being displayed to another user somewhere else, it has to load the feed. And all the feed items, the images, videos, those have to load and work. It should never be like taking more than a second, let's assume, to load and show the feed, or 2 seconds. So it should always be available.
Yeah, let's put it this way. We should mostly concentrate on the client and like availability, consistency, persistence. It's more of a backend concept. So I don't think you can influence a lot of here. If backend is slow, no matter what optimization the client do, you might not get. So let's not worry about it. Let's just worry about client.
Yeah. Okay. The reason I brought it up was because, like, for example, something like TikTok, those apps, I noticed even if you disable the network, they start up and start playing videos. You can scroll past them. So that's why I brought it up.
Yeah.
Okay. So more other features. Okay. We can, I think this is good enough for us to start at high level, do a high level design. Okay. This is, we'll have some sort of endless scroll list for the feed to start talking. Let me go read all this. And for the comments, because even though it's part of the main app, you would probably want to do it as a separate component because it's a product by itself when you look at it close enough. No. Good. Okay. Will be to support this. The app would probably create some sort of core abstract framework. So that any common features or any sort of shared UI elements or behavior can be derived from the common classes. And we'll probably have this would be something that you would get from design marketing. What makes this different from Instagram, a design framework or design from your client or the UI teams.
You mean this is like design system? It's not like mocks or whatever.
Oh, no, it's not mocks. It's more of a theme. What makes your app an app, like the colors, the UI style elements, and that's that was somebody else, some other team will come up, marketing team or somebody, design team would come up. So those would be on top of our UI. So we can switch these up if we need to. And there is data stack. So this will be, they will go on top of this. Just, we could have more, depending on how complex the features are, we could have, if you introduce any new component that goes on top of this. And we would have another stack which does routing. And config of the app when you, because the app, as you develop the app, you'll have environments, you'll have some configuration of the app as a whole that you need to be driven dynamically. So this component would take care of that. So this is at a high level how I would start off with the app. So basically we would have the feed and the comments would be, each would be separate modules, so that you could write this and test it. And the team for this might be the people who are working on the feed might be different from comments, because comments by themselves, it could be a complicated product, and it might have its own backend, it might have its own what do you call APIs, and you want to be able to test this separately. And any other features that would come up, this box indicates those. And at the underneath all these libraries, we would have another stack this is sort of support stack to the main feature that we have. So this is the framework for the app. And in the framework, we would have the data stack, which should go a little deeper once we start going in there. But this is going to take care of network access, ORM, not specific to feed or anything. It will have base abstract classes for how, let's say you want to use one vendor for storage, one vendor for different library, or for how you do make network calls, how you store it, and how you process the API data. Like you might use REST or protobuf or something else. So the data stack would be a replaceable component in there. And the core abstract UI would be the core UI components, like you might have a base activity or a base fragment, which ties into, for example, you wanna, it will become clearer once we dive into it, but it's sort of, you have a common class where if you want to have a behavior in any component, you want to track something, you want to enforce something, you want to display something, and this core layer bridges all these features of that on top. And the core UI, like I mentioned before, it would be something that the UI team will come up and provide you with, like how the elements on the UI would look like. So those will be applied on top of your core UI stack. So you can switch the design by just switching the core UI design. You can switch how the app looks throughout all the features that you have. Any questions?
No, it looks reasonable. Let's talk about feed.
Sure. Oh, feed. Okay. The feed. Let me. Are we doing the feed API? Are we assuming that the API is already there, or do
So
we
how
need
would
to
you build
develop?
the API?
Okay.
Which protocols would you use? What data format?
For feed, we can use JSON to start off with. We can optimize it if you need to do protobuf. We can use that, but to optimize, we can start off with JSON, and we would we would use one of the HTTP new APIs where you could keep the connection alive and the feed can be pulled as you scroll through or scroll up. You can keep getting the data, whatever is in the inside the feed, whatever element you're displaying, each post or with a photo or something, you can use the same connection to pull all the stuff. So I would use one feed API with paging, where you can have cursor position and direction of the scroll that you're doing. So if you leave the app and come back later and you want to be showing what you were seeing earlier, but now there is items at the top, so you could potentially scroll both directions. So you would need direction and amount, maybe 20 or 30 items at a time.
So for the position, is it integer? Is it what is the first query parameter?
This one you would probably derive from the server. It will be server could give a big encoded ID, alphanumeric ID, which the server might decode it, or it might have a mapping on its side on what it was showing. They could have more complex logic inside it, like it could have a timestamp in there, it could have user ID or something it could have, like if they bucketed the users into different categories, it could show that it's get from this bucket on this date 20 items before that time, or 20 items after.
Why would you need to encode all of this into this ID?
Oh, we won't encode. I was saying, like, it could be, this is a position, like if you have if you have some data on the server side which was personalized for this user or for this group of users that the feed is getting shown for, this cursor will point to that data stream on the server. It might have inside the position of the stream specific to this user or group of users. That's what I meant.
I'm just trying to understand, why would you need to encode all of this?
Oh, you don't encode. When I say you encode, it could be.
So the question, would client know about the format of this?
Oh, no, it wouldn't.
Okay.
So what would happen here, like when the feed returns, for example, it could return items, and at the end, it could have cursor, and it would give you the cursor. And so when you when you scroll, you'll pick up the cursor at the bottom, or it could have cursor at the top and a cursor for the bottom. You pick up whatever is the last item in the feed and you pass it on, so that the server can know where you are at.
Got it. But why can't you just use like raw IDs? So imagine you have records in database. why can you just use those records? Because it's much faster, right?
Row IDs, because rows get deleted, post might get deleted, the row is gone, and what do you call? You might want to, if this list is getting generated dynamically, like every day is different. If you go get a row ID, it's no longer valid. That you might be showing, if you filtered and optimized the stream for today's data, and tomorrow user comes back in, or like 1 hour later, and there was changes in the algorithm, something got upvoted more, and you want to change your algorithm, that the road ID would be sticky and it won't no longer be relevant because you changed the.
Okay.
Yeah. And depending on how you optimize it, like when you pull the feed, because feed will have, you might have potentially repeat users in your feed. So you might want, like, if you don't want to, because you have to show the whoever posted it, his profile icon or something unique to him, you can either send it in the feed if it's short, and if the feed is a diverse group of people, then you can just send that information in the initial API itself, or you could have another API which gives the user details, which you would need, but you might have a optimized one to give how the user icon needs to be shown or something. So, or the name of the user.
So, okay, so we're talking about API customization, right?
Yes, because when you scroll, you're showing the post and you're showing who posted it and his name, or if he has any description or some sort of title that goes around, or status that belongs to that user at the top of the post or at the bottom of the post along with his picture. So if you want, you can include it as part of the feed, or we can do it as part of the another API. So we can optimize it based on like performance. Like if you want to pull all the user data and include it as part of the feed itself, we can do it, or we can let the app pull those and cache that user information, that profile picture that gets shown in each page, each post in the feed.
Okay, so which approach would you recommend?
I would approach, if we doing just the image and user ID, very like only 2 details, I would put it in the feed. But if there is more, if there is like a status or something, that would have, if the design says we need to show the latest status of that person who posted, irrespective of when the post was posted. So we would, in that case, we would have another API. So it depends on the design. Which one do you think the client or the business would want? Whatever.
Okay, actually, it's an interesting topic. So let's imagine we want to know the status of each user, if they're online or offline.
Yes.
As you scroll, how would you approach it?
So if it's online, offline type of thing, then you wouldn't use this. You would probably want to keep it connect to another WebSocket on the same API or another server URL, which keeps the presence of all users. So when you're scrolling past it, you query it, and each datagram, like I'm just putting it as a URL, but it will be a WebSocket datagram that you would send to the user ID, and you'll get what the current status is, online or offline or anything else that you want. But you most probably want to keep it as a separate connection, which is kept alive to another server, which will be different from the feed APIs, if that's what we want. That
okay, so I'm just trying to understand how it works. So imagine you received the next page for your feed, right? So you have some information, and you're going to have user IDs. So at what point you're gonna go and request their status, and how often would you refresh it?
Oh, you would, so this socket, you will, as you going, as the user is scrolling, you would wait till the user pauses or touches again and the scroll stops. When he's watching it, when you know when he's interacting on that post, that's when you would probably go and get this information. If he's scrolling fast, and like, actually that's a good point. In that case, we might not need have a socket alive. If we do it, if we optimize it only to show it when it stops at the item, we can use the regular same APIs and get the status.
Okay, so basically, like, imagine you do scrolling, you do it fast, and you're not querying any of the user statuses.
Yep.
And then you stop.
Yep.
And then you start like querying, because
usually
the way.
When you stop, sorry, when you stop, only when you stop, whatever you're looking at, whatever post you're looking at, for that user ID, we pull the status, online status.
So if you ever saw anyone, or if you used Instagram yourself, usually like you do fast scroll, then you stop for like half a second to look at something, and then you keep scrolling.
Yep.
So like, how will you determine when you want to make the request?
Whenever the scroll stops, you probably would need a timer. Like if it's more than like 500 milliseconds, or let's say if it's a video and video starts playing, we would have to tune that to know if it's a picture, if it's a long text, and you might have to tune it, the numbers based on what post that type it is, either video or a text or a picture, and come up with some sort of numbers on how long of an interaction or a pause on the post will tell us that he's looking at it. Maybe like 200 milliseconds, 300 milliseconds, or a half a second. We would tune it to wait for that long and pull it.
Yeah, so my worry is that might create a poor user experience. So imagine you scroll something and then stop, and then you can say user, and bang, it just goes online.
Yeah.
That would be, it would, from the point of view of user, everyone would go online once you stop looking at their stuff.
Can you say that again, please?
So imagine like you have no indications about user status, right? So you just keep scrolling, and it's like, it's not there. It could be, imagine you have like red as offline, gray like you don't know, and green online. So you keep scrolling, and everyone is, for example, gray. And then you stop and you look at something, and bang, you see like the user went online once you stop scrolling. That would be a little strange.
Yes. So if the expectation is like you're right, like you might come back with user feedback or client feedback saying that it doesn't feel right, then in that case we would keep the WebSocket alive, and as you're scrolling like 4-5 items ahead, we would keep pulling the status of the user on both directions.
It would not necessarily be quick enough to show as you scroll, right?
If it's fast enough, no, it won't be. So what you would probably need is a queue. Like if it's, you add, like you pull like 2 or 3, and as you scrolling past, you would have to, if it's no longer visible, you scroll past it, you would have to remove those and add the ones that are coming up on the screen. So so you would have to play with the queue of your request to the WebSocket to figure out which one is more important. Like if you scroll past it, it's no longer required to be in the queue to pull the status.
Technically, once you send datagram, you can't really get it back. You can cancel it. Effectively, you can only ignore it, right?
Yeah, you can actually. So you would have to queue these datagram sock packets to let's say you are at item number 2 and your scroll can do maybe 20 or 10 items per second or something, and you add, you pauses there and you add the bottom 10 to the queue, and you scroll past and you're right now at 15, let's say. So you would have to, as you're scrolling past, you would have to remove all those and add the one, if you are 15, you would have to add and the direction is you're scrolling up, you would have to add 16, 17 or 18 items to the back to the queue and remove the others which are waiting to be sent out on the WebSocket. Yeah, if the server can handle multiple requests, and I don't think WebSocket supports streams, individual streams, unless you implement it yourself. But I would think you would have to use a queue to solve that.
Okay. So let's move to likes. So what happens when a user presses a like button?
So when you use okay, let me. Do you want to talk about the what do you call the API, or?
Just tell me what's going to happen, like step by step.
So when you click on the like button, so the image will change or something, and then you send it out. You make an API call saying that user liked it. It needs to be saved in his profile, in his history. So then the feed could be customized. So the next 30 items or 40 items might have an impact on you liking that tweet, that post. So we have to make an API calls to track that he liked it in the profile. So
when you said customization, would that run in real time, or?
Depends on how you want the product to be. Maybe there's a batch processing on his profile every so often, or it might be real time, immediate impact of the cursor. The cursor might point to new data after like 20, 30 items, or it might immediately update the next 5 items, 6 items to show more posts from the same user or same category, or however you're grouping whatever your algorithm is on the server. So that would depend totally on the server. So,
but effectively, like imagine you scroll a lot, you like something, scroll like, because it only takes like double tap to like something. So you can create lots of likes. So would server go and basically every time a new like is received would try to fetch a better feed for you?
Not every time. So if depending on the algorithm, they might have a batch processing of the user, or they might have some sort of real time. The stream itself, the feed itself might be a mixture of some sort of category based items and a mixture of, and it gets merged with personalized like data. So that would totally depend on what the server would do. Like if your algorithm says, if the server algorithm is immediately going to customize and inject into the stream or the category of the user, saying that we need to add this another new, like whoever post you liked, add that user's profile into your feed, and the feed might change how it's generating the next 20 items or 30 items, or it might take another 100 items before you see anything specific. So that would totally depend on the server. So I'm not sure how the Instagram does it, but I know some other apps do it immediately. I think TikTok does it within like next 3-4 minutes, but yeah.
Okay, so another thing I'm trying to understand. Every time user would hit like, you would send requests right away?
Yes.
Okay, and how many like parallel requests would you allow? So imagine you have to scroll,
Mhm.
right? You have to download images.
Mhm.
You have to do this online offline status,
Yes. So
and you have to
yeah.
send links. So that seems like lots of
Oh,
network activity.
yeah, okay. So the way that we would solve that, because it's at the part of the data stack and the feed, right? So the way we would solve it, for example, we're talking about images or video or any other binary content, those will be those will be coming from a completely different content servers. So
Right.
they will not have impact on our stream, which is JSON and text or like control streams. So because we'll be using HTTP2 for the main API server, we will have multiple streams. So one stream will not affect the other stream. And the likes will be, you're not making another connection. It's the same connection. This data is going back and forth, and you add the like data into the one of the streams and it gets taken care of. So
yeah, but the point is like the stream is not infinite, right? Even if you like hold one connection, you still pretty much are bound by your like network bandwidth.
Yes.
That means if even if you have one stream and you just put tons of stuff there, it's going to get very slow.
Yes, if it's if you want, so what the way we would do in that case, like for example, like because we'll be launching worldwide, and if we deploy, when we deploy to the countries where they have slow connection, or where there is no high-speed connections, even in US or something, if it's on, you would get this the data stack. We would have to save those requests in the queue or in the local repo. If you detect that it's low on battery, or if it's on running on 3G or only metered connection, something like that, we would queue it, wait till he gets back on Wi-Fi, or if the charger is connected, we'll postpone those requests and put them in a local storage till the device is like ready to send that data again. Because when you look at it this way, like if it's a feed, the image will take, like when you're scrolling, the image takes 100 kilobytes. Most of the images take 100 kilobytes. The videos are like 5 MB. So if you compare, you would have to find a balance. If you looking at like user status, update status, socket status, or like that data is less than maybe 500 bytes, 600 bytes. So when you're scrolling past it, and if the user is looking at images, each image would probably be equivalent to, let's say, 500 into 20 will be 5 kilobytes, 10 kilobytes, 200 times. So you would have to send 200 likes before it's equivalent to one of the image. So you would have to find a balance for that, because if you're scrolling and if you can't load the image, then the app is no longer the app that we're trying to develop.
Okay, so I'm interested about this part of finding balance. Like how exactly would you find balance? How would you configure it?
I would configure it. For example, if the product, the main selling point of the product is that we show the user what he's interested in at that time. And if the likes are a big signal on how relevant that the stream is, then they are critical part of our product. That means we have to know the likes immediately. if we want to tune the algorithm, if there is something, what do you call, you want to track the top 20 posts that are happening around that area, region, or that group of users, and the likes are what drives them instead of view, because the interaction with the feed post needs to be also be sent as part of core application performance monitoring, because without without the company and the product knowing which users are watching and interacting with which posts, our whole product's value on how we do the ordering of the feed items will not be relevant anymore if we don't know what users are watching or interacting with right now. So
okay, let's see. So we covered likes, but you said that we're gonna store data in local storage before sending, right?
yes, specifically, for example, when data is like, for example, I see the most of the social apps now do a lot of application performance monitoring, where they monitor how fast you scrolled, what's the battery level, what is like where you're located or whatever. So there's a lot of data that gets sent. Those can be stored, and if they're not immediately required for some sort of signal, those can be saved and pushed as a batch.
Okay, so imagine that you store a bunch of likes, like somebody scrolling, you have a couple of pages prefetched, right? And then network goes offline. So you put a like, right? And you store the request, put more store request, and then user wants to go back, like scroll back, right? And how would you show likes? Because in your paginated data,
yes,
there was no like.
Yes.
And
so
now you have one.
Yeah, so because that would depend on how we model our repo, and how we merge the ORM with the server data. So we could have we would have a completely separate model with any, like, for example, in this, like it could be also be comment or some other thing or that user did with the post. You would have to merge the data when you're displaying it. You would have to pull the data from the feed and check if for that item there's a change in a local ORM, if there is any data in the ORM.
So what like, tell me more about the common model for storage. So what exactly are you going to be merging?
So we will be merging, like, because the feed, when you get the JSON or model from the server and you push it to local ORM storage, and you're about to display, you can, at the time you push it, and when you bind it again to the UI elements and you're scrolling, at that point, because you know that there's you would have access to the other ORM or the other object model, where you have the pending likes that are waiting to be sent based on a post ID. You would have a like, whatever the type is. And when you display, because you can't keep merging every time you get feed items, you can't go look and do this merge, which could be expensive. So you would wait till the user, when you display it, the UI model can, at that point, when you bind the data to that view, you can check the pending stuff that user did on the post and merge the data and update the like from, like, if it was showing like gray colored icon or something, then you update it to mark it as something else, mark it as green or
Okay, so imagine use case that once again we scroll back and forth. We have prefetched data which we store in our local storage. So we have pending likes which all being sent.
Mhm.
So now when you scroll back, you go and see, do you have any pending likes? And you don't, because they're all being sent. So
Yes.
now you would again
There's-
show that you have no like.
Yes, you're right. So because the data is stale at that point, so so you can't keep it forever. So we probably, even after we send it, we, in this case, we would have to save it based on a timestamp on like of the feed item, or if it's, even if it's the other way, like done, then he unliked it, then there will be a mismatch. So we would have to take the local storage first before we, I mean, you could have multiple devices. One could be sending like, and other could be waiting on sending not like. So we would have to merge that data if it's based on the local.
Let's not worry about merging data, because most cases you're not going to be scrolling from two devices or something like this. Merging likes are easy, right? I'm just trying to understand, how would you solve this scrolling problem?
The scrolling problem, even after we send it, we probably, if it's, we would have to, I'm trying to think, well, if the server sends you the like with the timestamp, and you have on your local storage, you have the action of him liking or unliking it and the timestamp. So you pick whatever is the latest one and you show that one. Whether if server says they have one with a newer timestamp than what's in the storage, then we pick the, when the UI shows it, we pick the one which is the latest one.
Okay, which timestamp would be, are you going to be using for this?
That if the feed has a like and the time it was liked, or unliked or last modified time, and you on your local device you have pending or pending item, and
Right.
you are the whenever that pending was item was added, you have timestamp there, so you pick whatever is the latest one, whatever is the newest.
The server uses server time, right? And the client uses local time.
Yeah, so you would use epoch.
But how do you know that client time is correct?
Client time, so the client time, the way we know is like, you know, based on my experience, we would always have, when the app starts up, we always have adjustment of the time. We ping the time server, whatever time server you have. You can't change the device time, but you can see if there is an offset on how different the whatever your server is telling what the time is compared to what the device time is. So there could be a mismatch. And most of the, if the user is connected to cell network, the server, the cell networks correct the time. I mean, all the networks that I know of usually eventually correct the time. But if you don't want to depend on that type of third-party stuff, you could have an offset of when, how far off the clock might be off.
Okay, and when you said you would, I'm looking for a very concrete solution.
Okay.
So right now we have a couple options. Which one would you select?
I would, the best way to solve it, because you don't want to solve this type of stuff on a feed or somewhere at the feature level. You would want to solve it at the application level and and have some sort of layer that takes care of this feature and adjust the time. Either tell the user that the times are offset, and if, which probably is not a good experience, he probably doesn't care. In that case, you would save the offset and update whenever somebody is trying to compare the time. That component would have to be responsible to know what was the time, is it still currently wrong, still currently off by some time. So you would totally abstract that out and try to fix it. If it becomes big enough problem that you notice that there's like if you do APM and you notice there are a lot of users on from this place where this network is not connecting, and you want to do that, we can implement as a part of the application solution and fix it irrespective of feed.
Okay. So imagine a scenario. Some TikTok influencer wants to take down your app, right? So they would go and post a video, said like, hey, at this specific time, everyone opens the app and just start hitting like button like crazy. You just keep hitting like button of crazy. So how would you make sure that that would never happen, that this would never like put your servers down?
So because I mean, are they clicking like button multiple times on same item, or just
yes?
scrolling?
So imagine said like somebody wants to take you down, and they have like huge number of followers, and they send a post saying like, okay, starting like 12 p.m. today, everyone would open the app, open the top post, and just start hitting like button like crazy. Like, so we click like and like, and you do it as fast as possible for the next 2 hours.
Okay, so if you want to mitigate the DDoS for this, so we would, when we create the APIs, for example, feed or APM, any API that hits the same servers, irrespective of what it is, we would probably add protocols where you tell the client back to throttle the request. You'll send another HTTP request response code saying server is not ready to accept, wait for so long. You send a code, and we, as part of our data stack, we see it and we throttle it back, and we do an exponential backlog of all the requests. And also we probably want to do a fairness on the server, because if it's the same, like if the same group of users, we don't want to stop users who are not part of this DDoS prank to be able to use the feature. So we want to have some sort of fairness where we'll throttle only certain users. We would have to track them at some point based on user IDs, and then only for those user IDs limit the number of API requests that they're making, so that we can still serve the other users.
Okay, I get it. And last thing which I want to touch. So remember you told about like when you open TikTok, just all this content, it's right away. It's like so available. Can you tell me how would you build feature like this?
So based on what I thought is happening. So whenever you're scrolling, whenever
we're doing this. So when you open the app, there's content right away. There is no loading, no nothing. It's just there.
Yes. So this, I mean, personally, I noticed it for that to happen. That to happen initially, one feed request had to be done. Like that means it had to be open before one time. So what they're doing is whenever they're pulling the feed, it pulls the at least I think like 3-4 seconds or 5 seconds of the videos of all the videos that you're seeing. So it pulls, it caches the video on content of the scroll, whatever is in the scroll list that you're looking at. I think they pull 20 or 30. So they pull the data. It's heavy on the data. They pull all the data and store it. Sometimes it caches the WebP format, for example. So there is a little animation. It's not a video. So it caches all that, and the UI component, even though it's making network requests, it ignores it, because when it loads up, it's going to look at the ORM storage, and it's going to load the feed, and as long as there are enough items in the storage, it will show those and show the cache data.
So what I'm looking for, imagine you haven't opened the app for quite a while,
Mhm.
right? Imagine like you have this guilty pleasure of looking at Instagram on Sunday 6 p.m. every week.
Mhm.
This is your time. One, like you try to be like very mindful about 1 hour a week. You go
Yeah.
and just like mindfully scroll. So
Mhm.
when you open it at Sunday at 6 p.m., you
Mhm.
want to see fresh feed right away.
It's,
So no loading, no prefetching, like boom, user.
These would be the requirement be that when it loads, is it relevant for that day or
Yes,
could be
it
anything?
should be like every time you open the app, the feed should be as fresh as possible.
Okay, so in that case, what we would do is based on whatever, if the goal is for those users, we need to do it. So we would send a background notification and get the app to refresh the data in the background based on, you probably want to include conditions that it's on Wi-Fi or whatever we come up with rules, and pull like at least the top, if when it pulls the feed for 20 items, pull all the full video for the first 10 items or 5 items, and the rest of them just keep it as the feed without cache, so that when you open it the first time, the feed is already there. So you would want to, if you notice that it's happening between 6 o'clock and 8 o'clock, we send it, we start sending notification maybe like that day few hours ahead to go pull the data, to refresh the data, do a background refresh. And if it's on, if the device is on good enough health, like it has battery, and if the OS didn't restrict it already, and if it's on Wi-Fi, you might come up with pulling all the 20 videos or whatever. If it's on metered connection, pull based on user preferences, pull only like 3 or 4. So we would do something like that based on notification and background.
But in this case, for users which might be not as active, you're going to be pulling data pretty much. You're going to waste traffic.
Yes.
Which is user on Wi-Fi, it's not bad, but you actually put a necessary load for your backends, because effectively, like you're only going to be using like 5% of those prefetch requests. So how would you deal with this? So imagine your backend team comes and said like too much.
Yes. So what we would do is we would build some sort of profiling system. And I mean, obviously we can't sell it like 80 million customers or whatever they have, users they have. We would profile the users who come back often enough, are influencers, or people who have lot of followers, or people who interact with app by liking, commenting and stuff. You come up with these users who are giving you the data to make the platform better, whatever criteria we would use. We would pick those users and send those people who are more often to come back at certain time on certain days. Or you might pick up, this region needs to be refreshed. You might pick up by region or based on whatever profile. We would only send the notification. And you might also want to include, like, for example, if the user is, you might want to tune it, like if the device is fast and he's always on Wi-Fi on that time of the day or something, you might even tune it to not even pull all the data, just pull 1-2 videos, and rest of them just the basic feed data. So we could optimize it and tune it based on our load. If we are, because we're sort of predicting what will happen, so there is a probability that your prediction like is always going to be like 70-60%. You'll be lucky if the prediction is like 80% or 70%. So we are taking chance that, because we're trying to save our systems at 6 o'clock, so we pull it at 5 o'clock or 4:30. So it's like a trade-off, whether you want to keep system available at 6 o'clock for everybody by pushing unnecessary data potentially unnecessary data at 4:30 or whatever. So you would come up with some sort of trade-off to distribute 6 o'clock load to 1 hour earlier, 2 hours early.
Right. So we actually hit the like 1 hour mark. So let me put a link. Okay, I was recording all this time. I was just not sure.
Yeah.
So this is the link, and I'm going to jump straight to feedback.
Okay, sure.
Also, what was missing? Clarification. We didn't touch anything at all. It just, we're gonna have like availability, consistency, but once again, it's more of a backend topics. You can't really change it. You may influence it the way how your app behaves, but it's pretty strange to bring it up without any further justification. Like what exactly you're gonna do. Then we would talk about some user experience. I can't remember, I have just brought up UX, but didn't tell anything about the implementation. Actually, I can't remember why I put this, but something triggered me. Okay, so I forgot. So what was really missing from terms of like non-functional requirements? Do we need to support offline mode? Do we need to worry about security, privacy? What device will do support, like device types, SDK versions, authorization, etc. Rate limiting DDoS protection, which I kind of like gave you a hint later on, but those also things you might want to mention. And considering the amount of experience you have, I would expect you to go to like staff level position.
Yeah.
And this is like staff level position, you go more from technical details to more like strategic and business questions. That's why I never like probe you on any like low level stuff. Like, how would you do this? I was mostly interested how you build the app just to make sure that it's gonna work on 1 billion users, which is very critical in this case. Yeah, like you started with high level diagram. I was not sure about like blocks in the beginning, but then it kind of makes sense. So I think diagram looks good. Also, I never seen anyone just to put like design system and core abstract UI stack. You can call them system frameworks or something like this. Yeah, having everything else like routing config, secure storage. Well, you put secure storage without any justification. Like why exactly you need secure storage? Because we never talk about privacy, we never talk about security. And I'm sure like I kind of see like the diagram, like your screen is kind of have like this white tint. Is it just me?
Sorry, hold on 1 second. I was taking notes, so that's why.
Oh, okay. All right. So, let's see. Okay. Then we jump. So, in terms of diagram, I think it's solid. You can see all the components, and you brought up separation modules. The only thing which kind of struck me, like you look very slow in explanation. Like you're really taking your time. Like going and just describing it over again, and we wasted so much time on this. Like I would maybe like speed up, and just don't go in too much detail unless you've been explicitly asked. Okay. So when we got to feed, I asked you about like data format, protocols. So basically said, oh, we should start with JSON, and then we can use one of these HTTP2 protocols. So it's a very poor justification. They said, oh, we can optimize. What exactly we're going to be optimizing? Like, what's the pros and cons? They said we can start with JSON because it's the easiest one to do, but there's sort limitation. It's very verbose. There is no schema, and like we can do better, like using protocols, for example, right? Like, why would you use HTTP2? So pros, cons of everything. Like if you use persistent connection, are there any drawbacks? Because holding the connection is expensive, especially when you're on a spotty network, right? So network stack was not clearly explained. It's basically you threw lots of buzzwords and we just moved on. Like that would make a poor design. Same with pagination. You said, okay, we're going to be using this cursor, and it kind of out of blue. So okay, is it cursor pagination? And then you said it's going to be this ID, and this ID gonna have lots of stuff in it. So basically, you said we're going to be encoding our IDs for cursor, and your explanation might not be correct. Usually, why they encoded is just to hide implementation details. You can use database IDs, and you're still going to have the same issues even if you encode, like stuff getting deleted. You would need to make sure that your windows would not slide, etc. This is why you use cursor, but why you would encode usually for security reasons. So nobody can go and reverse engineer your database or whatever data format and whatever data storage you're using. And cursor ID should be very lightweight. I would not add any of user information, wherever. It just usually it can be like some kind of encoding. It's up to you how to do this. People might just encrypt it, but client has no idea about what's in it. It's just a token which you can use to go back and forth. Then, like we talk about data format, which was absolutely not clear. We just put like URL, and we never talk about the size of pagination, like how much data we're going to fetch, like how many pages, sizes of the pages. We said, okay, let's say 20. How would that be affected by the network state? Then we started talking about like feed with user ID and performance considerations. And this is where you kind of corner yourself. You said, oh, we might want to have online offline status. And like your best bet is not just to add any additional requirements, because I said, oh, cool, let's do this. And now it's a completely different problem and it becomes harder. And as you can see, it's very hard to pull it off because there's lots of details which you may miss, especially when you try to do on in real time. And as an interviewer, I'm gonna keep probing you. I see like your screen got this.
Oh, sorry. Hold on.
Again.
Okay.
You can watch the recording. You don't need to take notes right now. So basically, I would go and try to corner you just to see how far you go until I get a clear signal that you have no idea what you're talking about. And with this one, it was pretty quick. So don't add anything on top of what you're being asked. Just try to think in terms of MVP, what actually going to bring most value for business. Showing online offline state, I would not say it brings lots of value for the business, because for app like Instagram, for example, it's not clear when you're online or offline. Are you online when you scroll or just use an app, or when you're posting something? I don't think it's a good business justification for it. It's totally fine to push back. That like, you know what, it's gonna have like additional load on the backend. It's hard to do it correctly. Can we push it back? So I would expect some level of negotiation here.
Okay.
Okay, then we try to talk about likes, and once again it was like very sketchy about. You started talking about backend processing, like getting batches and bring like other apps, like how other apps might be doing this. This is not design. You just pretty much tell me. You told me like how your competitors might be doing business, but it doesn't add anything to design. So if you decide to go with this and tell them like, oh, we might have some algorithms, it's not design. It just you just speculate, right? So if you can describe it clearly, don't bring it up.
Okay.
What was totally missing? Quality of service. So basically you say, oh, we're going to have one connection and we're good. We can just put all kind of stuff. Unfortunately, you can't, because you're limited by the bandwidth. So I would say getting the metadata, get the pagination is your #1 priority. This is like your top priority, because if you don't have paginated data, you have nothing to show. Then your second priority is just to fetch thumbnails. So if you scroll, you can see everything is blurry, but then when you stop, you can actually see full res. Right? And then you download full res. And once again, you would need to maintain a queue of like what stuff you're gonna download, what we're gonna cache, when cache gonna be evicted, when it's grows too big, etc. That was totally missing, and this is a critical part of design, because this is what affects our backend performance and network traffic, battery life, everything, right? Like there's lots of cases when you said finding balance. I'm not sure what this is. You should be very concrete in your implementation. There should be no like vague philosophical discussions about, well, if we find right balance, like I'm expecting a very clear solution.
Okay.
So if you find balance, you tell me exactly what balance is. Then about opportunistic state. So what if you click like and said, oh, we're gonna like send request. Okay, that might be a poor idea because people might go on and click likes like crazy, which is gonna generate additional traffic on top of what we already have. So yes, we can batch them. That's great, but how we'll make sure that UI stays up to date. So when you go back and forth, especially if you get data and you say, okay, we're going to have pending like. So as you can see, I kept probing you just to see how far you go. And at some point, I got all the signal I wanted that you could not bring a very concrete solution to this problem, right? And we like once I get the signal, so like probing you further, it just gives you a chance to redeem yourself. But once I see that, okay, the candidate hits the wall, there is no reason to torture them on top of this. You're going to be better off just to move in and to see if there can be other useful signal you can catch there. Every time when you bring up timestamps, you take a risk because you cannot trust device time, especially when you said, oh, I'm going to be using Epoch. Now that's a poor thing. Like what you usually do, you can use two clocks. The one clock, for example, is when the app started, and the other one is system, or like upstart or device uptime, and the other one is Epoch. And you see if there's can be any discrepancy between them, if it changes unexpectedly. Then yes, you can pin time servers, but coming again, how often would you do this? Like, would it be on a schedule, or would there be some events which gonna trigger this? So handling time properly is very, very hard task.
Yeah.
And especially when you try to compare, like if you try to resolve conflicts, you do two mistakes. First of all, you try to do it on a client. That's not safe. Second, you try to do it using timestamps. So totally not safe. Like I would not go there unless you work with time and you know how those kind of things can be handled. Yeah, so my signal, like if I would submit reports, I would put the TC, the technical candidate, does not know how to handle our client time properly. Vague explanations, right? Okay, storage data. One more time, it's very vague. It's oh, we're going to be using common model. Like, what is common model? Because we don't even know what we're storing. We don't know the format. And then we start about merging conflicts and backend servers. So you put your scope is so large. So we're talking about storages and conflict resolution, backend, multiple clients, and no useful signal out of it. Yeah, we didn't have lots of time to discuss data stack, but you should be very concrete on what exactly you're going to be storing, why. Prefetching. So one more time, you brought it up. You brought a topic which kind of made the problem more complex. So said, oh, we're going to be go and just prefetch 20 posts and the like 5 to 4 seconds of videos. That's very wasteful. Usually, like what Instagram, like I remember reading their blog, they try to capture your usage patterns and prefetch stuff right before you expected to open the app. But I can see lots of privacy consideration in this, especially if we ship in Europe. Then somebody gonna say, okay, this app is actually trying to build a user profile to modify their behavior, right? So those are things which can trigger lawsuits. And you, as a staff engineer, should be aware of this. Like privacy is like your number one worry, number one priority. And once again, when you said I'm going to be prefetching such and such, you should bring like very good justification why exactly this is the case. And maybe you want to run A/B experiments, prefetching different amounts and just see. So I would say make no assumptions. Everything should be data driven, and make sure that you're not going to end up in court because of your decisions. Yeah. So this kind of stuff is very hard to pull off. So if you're not sure that it's going to be, so imagine you read all those articles about prefetching and have idea, you have like all pros and cons. You can bring it up and you can try to capitalize on this. So if you trigger your interview on this and go this path, and then you deliver a really good solution, that would be like a good signal. But if you just, oh, I heard it. So don't bring up anything you're not ready to speak about it, because it's kind of like you're digging your own grave. Yeah, like general feedback. Like if there is a number of users, like 1 billion, that means that scalability considerations should be like your top priority. So for example, like holding a socket connection for online offline status and just like sending data like crazy, that might not scale really well, especially if it doesn't bring any business. So you're not building like a trading app, so like when you need this real-time data. Prefetching large amount of data. Oh, we're gonna prefetch 20 posts and 4 to 5 seconds of video. That, like, even if everything goes to CDN, CDNs are not free, right? Like you would probably going to be paying them for the amount of traffic you generate. Not thinking about backend load. Like, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, and most likely backend team said, okay, like you exceeded your quota. You exceeded your quota for CPU, for traffic, for storage. What will you do? Lots of vague explanation without concrete details, philosophical discussion. I'm looking for concrete solutions, because you would deliver design. It should be like very concrete. It might not be perfect, but it should be concrete and properly justified. So you do the best, like having all the experience like you have. Of course, if you were on Instagram team, you probably can deliver way better design. But nevertheless, we'll do this. We'll do this. I also had to explicitly ask you about unhappy paths all the time. So what if like you should be driving this? So like general recommendation, imagine you're preparing for system design. You lay out solution and then just try to see how you can put it down. What can go wrong? Because if there is something can go wrong, it would go wrong. So be the devil advocate, like try to put yourself down in terms like, okay, if I do this, what negative consequences maybe could happen? And you just try to think in these terms. Because the higher you go into engineer ladder, the more pessimistic about stuff you should be. Like when you L4, it's just like, oh, everything great. You just need to make it work. L5, like, yeah, but what about load? L6, like, oh, what if we're gonna get sued? So, and higher up, it's even bigger stakes. Yeah, and like one general thing which kind of got me this feeling that you know lots of things, like no doubt this, but you can't really go into deep discussion for any of those. Like throwing buzzwords, like drawing diagrams, making sense. So I would not say it was bad, but like once you probe any of those topic a bit deeper, that's it. So if you throw stuff on the table, make sure that you know it. Yeah, so it's kind of, wow, it's the longest one we ever had.
I have one question. So how would, because when you ask, for example, when we dig into, like, for example, dig into feed, how the feed works, right? How do you, and you're trying to explore how the feed works, how do you work so that you don't you don't open new requirements or talking about stuff that was that was not the part of the feature that we started off with? Then we start exploring the feed, and then so many scenarios start coming up. How do, like, I was assuming, because at like you're saying L6 level, you'd have to think about that stuff. So you say one word and that could be explored further. So how would I need to be looking at like signal from the interviewees to know, do we want me to go further on this, or should I just stop? Or how far do we dig deep into anything that we're talking about?
Well, let's see. Like they said, okay, let's go deep into feed. Your first idea, okay, what's the most critical part for the feed? And it's probably an infinite scrolling. Because it's a must. You cannot do anything else. Infinite scroll this. So what are your considerations for infinite scrolling? First of all, performance. It should be smooth. If it's jank, even if it's like super effective, people wouldn't install. So performance number one. So what do you need to do for performance? You need to make sure that you do as little things as possible. Okay. And then you're saying, all right, so when we do this and we want everything to be like continuous and like very performant, so it's not like how fast your app works, and it's how users would perceive it, right? So that means that you need to be very smart about prefetching. And then you say, okay, what I need to prefetch? It's, you don't need everything at once. Some things have higher priority, some things have lower priority. So higher priority going to be is actually rendering anything on the screen. Because if user scrolls and then it stops at the end, and you just like keep doing this jerk movements, the target audience, especially for Instagram, has a very short attention span. If it's not going to be resolved like in 400 milliseconds, they would uninstall it and go use TikTok. So you've been losing your audience, and acquiring audience is very, very expensive. So you said, okay, so my number one priority is just to download pagination data. Then, like it's Instagram, I need to render something. You would need to render sums, and then you need to render full res. So okay, so if I prefetch them, like what amount of data do I want to prefetch? Like, would I cache something? What about cache? Okay, so when you cache something, your storage grows. How do I make sure that storage would not grow uncontrollably? So if at some point device runs out of space, and you go to system settings and you get app storage, it's going to be sorted by the number of local storage being used, and your app might get uninstalled. So you can go like very, very far without even thinking about anything outside of this. Like those, I'm not saying those are like the way to go. Like, please don't try to remember it by heart.
No, I was just exploring because you are saying, because it's to balance it so that you don't go too far in, so that we can keep the discussion about the feed. And like you are saying, the interview might explore your knowledge on that particular thing that you just said something about.
Yeah, but the idea is it's pretty much same as police interrogation. Everything you say might be used against you.
Yeah. Okay.
So don't, because in this case, you said, oh, like prefetching. Like, I wasn't thinking about prefetching, but yeah, it's a good idea. And I put a note, ask about prefetching.
Yeah.
And said online, offline status. And I said, boy, that would be tough. Well, let's see, like, kind of burst up. Let's see how far you go until you hit the wall, and you're gonna hit the wall. Yes. No matter what you ask, what you tell, I can put more requirements, and effectively, like at some point, it would be like intractable problem. But I'm interested to see how far you go.
Okay. So question. So normally it's in general, like I was planning to do more exploration of each individual feed and the UI, how the inside the feed, how it would look like, what the core UI stack means, because though, like you're saying, it would expose more things and bring up more domain knowledge about different things. So should I just stick to at the high level, just explain it and not draw? Because I was planning to draw more about the actual what would be inside data stack, what would be the modeling, how the modeling inside the data stack would be specific to feed and comments, and what would be actually be inside the core UI stack, and how it ties together with routing and configuration. Would that be too much? Because like you're saying, it would expose to a lot more.
So it really depends on the way you frame it. So for example, I kind of disagree that data stack should contain like everything. I would say, oh, so I have this like data abstraction,
yes,
and then I'm gonna have network and blah, blah, but this is totally legit. So when you said data stack, so imagine you start with your diagram. You said, okay, I'm gonna have two major components, one for feed and one for comments. Feed would have endless scroll UI, and comments, I'm not sure what's the purpose of having like the box same UI. Doesn't bring anything. Okay. And then you say any other components going to be on the same level. So cool, you use multi-layer architecture, great. And then you say, I'm going to have some supporting components, one for routing, and I need it because I don't want components to know about each other, and you're going to be a third-party entity which does communication between them. Awesome. Then he said, I would need to have remote config because I want to use feature flags and make sure that I can change the app after it's been released. Perfect. And then I would need secure storage because I would need to make sure that any data we store would not be compromised. And it's like, well, like everything we have is kind of public data. Why would you need secure storage? Because it comes with CPU cost, right? And the coding is not free. But okay, secure storage it is, which kind of gives like this weak signals that you make sure you want to make sure that the user data is not going to be compromised. Then you said data stack. So see, like data stack, you kind of like very, very broad. So data stack gonna have everything, it's replaceable, blah, blah, blah. And then it said, okay, and then I'm gonna have core abstract UI stack and design system, which is very different resolutions. So if you said data stack and core frameworks, great. But now you kind of mix and match stuff, and that's interesting. That's
Yes.
kind of like what, like I like the approach that you bring up design system. I never seen it before, but yes, you
Yes,
need
the
to have
data
your design
stack,
system.
I didn't explain it right. I mean, maybe I didn't even name it right there, but I actually had like another, I was going to go in and show what's inside would be, how would just, I mean, it's too late now, but if I didn't explain it the first time clearly enough, then it's too late. So, but yeah, I'll think about how to explain it correctly.
Yeah, I would say like you made a strong presumption on about path we're gonna take, but I would say endless scroll is way more exciting topic than data stack.
Yeah.
And honestly, when you said about prefetching, I already locked in my mind that, oh, I'm gonna go in and like dig deeper on prefetching. So here I allowed like extra time because we don't have any time pressures. But on the interview, I might like, oh, you know what? Like, screw this. Let's talk about prefetching.
Yeah.
And that's it. So like, you've been preparing for everything. You get like good data stack in mind, but now like a good system design is when I ask you a question, which you never expected.
Yeah.
Because I want to see how well you can navigate ambiguous situations, because this is a part of your job. You're not building a system which you know. You build something which you have no idea about.
Yeah.
And so that backfired.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the biggest takeout, if you're really looking for L6 position, think about business and unhappy path. Like,
okay.
Honestly, for L6 candidates, I don't care about implementation.
Okay.
But if they said, oh, like capturing user information, which may help you to create a user profile, which then you may use to modify like user behavior in the app. It's like, like, why is it important? And then you go and tell me why it's important. That would be a very good signal, because otherwise, imagine you did everything good, you get really nice neat diagram, and like I would say, oh, no hire for L6, hire for L5, and you just lost a level.
Yeah. Okay.
But once again, this is, I'm not representing any company. I'm just like sharing my thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah. I understand.
Okay. Okay. We have lots of time spent already, but anyone from the audience want to raise their hand and provide more input? Kirill?
Hi, Alex. Hi, Raj. Thank you for your job, guys. Alex, your comments incredibly important for community. Raj, a really good scheme, but I have few comments about that. So first of all, the first thing which you mentioned is that you're gonna use for core framework or something like framework something. Yes. And the point is you haven't asked about requirements if there are any applications which will reuse this framework, because when you use framework, it's add extra complexity to maintain that, because it could be version hell. I mean, when few libraries in your core and then your main project will not like you have to merge version, so and could add extra complexity. Yes, so and the other in the through interview you add like conditions without requirements, but you reference to these requirements. So I think this is kind of add complicity to the system design. And the other thing that's clearly was clearly understandable, that you kind of struggling to make a decision. It's what about Alex said, that you provide a lot of if-else condition in the dialogue, and as the technical, I think you're all technical guys, but it's really complicated to stick to your thoughts, to your thoughts flow. So if only one thing you can change, it's just make decision. That's it. So just make decision, and it will be much more interesting to listen, because sometimes you just I lost the flow.
Yes, I understand.
Yeah. So kind of over engineering. So probably you have a lot of expertise, experience, and you try to bring and show the whole cases. But I think as engineers, we have to take responsibility for our decision and just kind of slightly ask, like, are you okay with this pros and cons? And that's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you for the feedback. Hey, Alex, a question. Like you mentioned, like at that level, L6, you more focused on, like because we started with feed, so we focus on the feed performance and how the business, like the privacy concern, that type of stuff. So because I think I started on the wrong place, where I was thinking about the app also. So in these interviews, I should only focus on not the app holistically, just the feed parts and the business of the feed and how the user interacts with the feed, and nothing about how the app. I mean, I probably spent way too much time thinking about how, if anything, that I do in feed would be relevant to the app and how the rest of the app will perform. So I should not do that after the initial diagram.
I can't really tell, because this is just my perception. So I keep saying this, like, this is how I believe things are, which might not necessarily be the same as your interviewer believes, because your goal is to pass the interview. Your goal is just to provide right signals so the interviewer would go and write a favorable feedback.
Yeah.
So I don't think there is a very good clear cut, unless then your interviewer come watch my stuff and said, okay, that makes sense. This is how I'm going to be structuring my interview. But if they never seen this and they have completely different idea in mind. So remember, your interviewer might not know really well how to conduct system design interviews.
Yeah.
Because especially for mobile, there is literally nothing.
Right? Yeah.
And you might have like very good knowledge and very good idea of how to structure it, and it might not work well with them because they just like to have just general discussion about stuff.
Yeah.
Or maybe they confuse system design interview with domain knowledge. When they're gonna go and ask, okay, tell me about like MVVM, MVI. Tell me about like coroutines. This is like totally wrong, especially for high-level candidates. I would say I have no idea, like, because I can't really speak for your interviewer. It really depends on the company. It really depends on the experience and their personal style. But like, what you should be looking after, like, you driving conversation, you make decisions. You're not looking for validation, right? So, like, does it make sense? Is it good? Like, no, you don't ask those kind of questions. And imagine that usually as a high-level engineer, it's not like you building it yourself. You're working with a team, and sometimes team members are less experienced. You said, oh, let's go and just like fire network requests like crazy. They said like, well, we can't really do this because we have lots of consumers to serve, and we have quotas on the backend, right? So it's basically they come with some proposal that might be exciting, but you should always think, okay, what's the outcome of this? What's the worst thing that can happen? And if it happens, how can we respond to this? So just
Okay.
try like imagine you actually building the product, and your
Yeah.
goal is not to be in the latest news.
Yeah.
So like there is Kirill has Musk on his avatar. So imagine Musk pulled you up and said like, oh, it sucks. Scrolling sucks. Bang, you lose all your customers.
Yeah.
So your goal is just to make sure it never ever happens.
Okay.
But there is no rule of thumb like, oh, I said, oh, if you do this, it's going to be success, because unfortunately, interview is very biased. Like when you actually build a system, it's pretty different. If you have like very solid principles in mind of how you approach this kind of system, what you pay attention to, like this is where your experience really shine. But if you look at this, you try to gain experience of passing the interview,
Okay.
which is very different. I mean, they kind of intersect, but being a good engineer and you made an impression of experienced engineer, right?
Mm-hmm.
But practicing passing the interview is very different.
Yes. I agree.
So
Yeah.
I don't give you like very strict recommendations. I like strict paths to go. Like, oh, if you do such
Yeah.
and such, you're gonna be golden. No, probably not gonna happen. But if you bring up consideration, justify everything, like very strict and concrete in your approach, you can have better chances to pass it.
Okay.
Compared to like, oh, I've been an engineer for 16 years. Like, why would I prepare? You just go on and fail.
Yeah.
Not because you're not qualified. You just didn't have enough time practicing the kind of things.
Yeah.
Vitaly?
Yeah, first of all, like really, I mean, I understand that Alex a bit crucified you here, but that's his job. But
yeah, it is. I actually wanted it because otherwise I would have learned. I would have to get feedback. Yeah.
But just so you know, it's probably one of the best like performances I think in a while here, like really like deep dive, and I liked it. So that definitely shows experience from your side. But I was actually going to comment exactly on that question of yours is how much time should I spend on this diagram? And probably nobody gonna like tell you exactly, but I timed it, and the first question about functional requirements from Alex was when you post at 18 minutes. So 18 minutes in, and that was the first time the word feed was,
Okay.
voiced. So yeah, like 18 minutes in, it's more than a quarter of your time. And then the first question, like, let's talk about the feed. And yeah, the diagram makes sense, but that's like 18 minutes. It sounds like a luxury that you can't afford. Because like, frankly speaking, everybody like comes with this idea of, clean architecture, and then you start enumerating all the components.
Yep.
And if I don't stop you, there is no reason, to pause on routing. Why not drop in a dependency injection, or why not add, like testing module, and it's all nice, right? Good and
it took too long. Yeah.
As an interviewer, I would think all this part is waste of time, because at this level, I want to really like test you, and this is more like a la carte material that you can find in any Medium post. So yeah, I mean, if you can do all of this is good, but if you can like squeeze it, that probably is better. And in terms of like short non-functional requirements, maybe you got confused a little because like, yeah, when I hear that give me the exact clone of Instagram, then I might immediately assume that all non-functional requirements of Instagram apply, and then that's why I don't ask more. But I think that's like still a poor approach. It's still probably better to voice that you understand whatever is there. It's also here, but you have to go through the list. And yeah, like as Alex mentioned, like to to check all the marks about like offline mode and privacy concerns and all the stuff. Yeah, that's all. And I don't want to jeopardize your like session and there's still any of the time here, but if anybody wants to comment later or maybe in the Telegram, I am genuinely interested about the expected solution for merging likes with the feed without using time, because I was pretty much following Rush here, and I was on board with him that yes, in one table you keep likes, and another table you have this feed, and you merge, and then yeah, like logical question: what if likes are already uploaded but feed is not updated yet? What do you do? And yeah, I mean, I can't think anything except timestamps here. So yeah, please enlighten me. Thanks, appreciate it.
I would say this is something which has like big diminishing returns. Like most likely users would not even notice this, right? So what you can do, you can say, okay, server always has authority. Bang, that's it. Server overrides everything. That's it. Like you don't need to worry about time and stuff like this. In terms of how you can store, imagine that you, instead of just storing raw response from the server, you just build this model. So you actually, like, there is something which represents the feed, and then you go and update feed directly, like this model. You persist it, you do this. So this way you don't need to have like multiple sources of truth and make sure you synchronize it correctly. I would go ahead and try to push back as much as possible on this feature, because it's very hard to say that it really brings any significant value. Like what you need to do, you need to make sure that user perceives the app as being very responsive. I mean, when you press like button, it immediately read. It becomes read right away. There is no loading, no being gray, no nothing. And then you just update your model and you go and you try to merge it. But merging Boolean flags is easy. So you just pick up heuristic. Like, what are you gonna do? Like, would you pick server stuff, server time? Would you server version? Would you pick local version? Like, I would not go like very complex on this, because, as I said, it's hard to do properly, and might just like backfire big times. Most likely, users would never even notice it. I remember watching some old YouTube videos about how YouTube being made, and they said like, well, we didn't really know how exactly how many likes the video has, so we just estimated like, well, let's say it's this, and no one would go and say, oh crap, like it's not like 7 million, like 4,327, it's actually like 45. Like, you can cut corners. You just need to make this illusion and create this illusion that your app is very performant, is very responsive, it just works on every device and very fast, etc. And if some things like fall off wagon, it's fine, unless like somebody comes and said like, your app sucks because I just found out that I put this like and then it's gone, something like this. Yeah. So once again, it's a very interesting discussion, and one of the signals when you don't like blindly follow what you've been being told. That, oh, we really want like feed to be like loaded immediately, no delays on any network, and use no network traffic. So you can go and say many of those things you're requesting are not feasible, and here is why. And here's what like the best approximation we can build. So you always keep this in mind, because you have time, you have budget, and you're always limited by the skill level of your own experience and your engineers. So like it's a very like very interesting balance which you need to find, but you can't learn it. You can only like you can learn it from books or videos. It only comes with experience. So once you've been in a couple of negotiations in your career, you know exactly what you can and cannot push. Yeah. So yeah. Any other comments? Anyone? Okay, it's Kirill again. Right?
Yeah, Alex, I have a question for you. So through this mock interview, I just I think as any other viewers think like okay, how I would do this or that, and sometimes it's I came with two solution, but no none of this isn't perfect. So how like any of us should like show like, okay, this is not a perfect solution, but I will choose this one. And yeah, how to deal with this, how to deal when you don't have, you can't solve whole problem with one solution. Like, yeah, what to do in this case during the mock interview?
You bring
Or
pros
it's
and
just
cons.
okay, so just show them up and say, okay, I will choose this one because
Can you have a
pros
concrete
outweigh-
example? Let's maybe talk concrete.
Yeah, okay. For example, when you asked about prefetching of data for feed, right? So
Mhm.
here we have few. I have few solutions for this. First one is like push notification, as we said, but here like a lot of slick things like load suiting or push can be off or something like that. So and other solution, it's when a person use the application and during this session we already upload for him feed for the next session, for example. But in this case, it could be outdated. So yeah, and like which one to choose and how to show which is better, because when you prefetch from the last session, it's more safe, but it's outdated data and it's affect our business value. But when we upload from push notification, it's always fresh, it's always trendy videos or photos, but it's come with overloading servers, it's come with lawsuit, it comes with using a lot of network. So yeah, it's like business value and safety, for example, which to choose at this case, at this point.
I don't think there's a very good recommendation here. Like it really depends what heuristics you're using. So imagine you're short on time or you're understaffed. You said, okay, maybe it won't give us good business values, as for example, building a good profile of user and prefetch like right before they're going to use the phone. But we just don't have capacity to deliver this. So instead, he said, let's just bring up the old feed, which is still better than nothing, right? Old feed, old videos are better than loading indicator. And as I said, you brought up like valid points. If we if we just do mindless prefetching on just some simple stuff, like if we connected to Wi-Fi or specific time of the day, it's easy to implement. And it's already better than just showing the previous feed. So we have we have some improvements, but it's coming with a cost. So now we increase traffic, and then you do estimation of how much traffic you're going to increase. And then you grab this estimation, you go to your backend team and said, okay, if we roll out this feature, this is exactly how much we're going to add in terms of loads and network traffic. Is that okay? And just look at it like, no, that's totally not okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, okay,
so it's
what
negotiation.
If we just, yeah, there's
Gotcha.
lots of negotiations, and you need to deliver. You need to deliver. So you should deliver maximum user value in shortest amount of time with the like lowest negative consequences. So this is same like CAP theorem for backend. You can only pick two or something like this. Negotiations. In many cases, stakeholders kind of feel like a blank screen. Raj, did you do everything? Okay, better.
Okay. Yeah. So I understand correctly that we have to ask about the requirement that we should deliver as soon as possible, or it's just as a default requirement. So because sometimes like system design will differ different if it's like enterprise project or startup project. So looks like we have to ask about this on the early stage of system design. So in which type we are, like which product we are building, right? Which team we have. So it's kind of requirements with which we have to find out?
This is exactly why you need to get the requirements, and this is why system design questions are very vague. So I said,
Mhm.
I want an Instagram clone, right?
Mhm.
And like depending on what the candidate brings up as follow-up questions, considerations, what features they think is most important, that's a signal. So it's like system design interview is not about solution. It's about the signal which you send. So like in like 1 hour or less, I have to evaluate a person which I never met, if they're going to be a good addition to the team and can solve problems which we have at hand. So it's extremely biased, right?
Gotcha,
But
gotcha. Mhm.
any other approach is extremely expensive. So imagine you would bring every candidate for a month and let them work. That would be disaster, right?
So it's kind of like speed dating, kind of
Yeah.
speed dating. Like,
So if you prepared, if you applied some cologne, you have a new fresh haircut, you have much better chances if you just woke up like 10 minutes before this.
of course, as an interview. Okay, cool.
Yeah, so like if you're looking for answers, I'm gonna give you none. So first of all, if I give you answers and you take them as granted, it's at best it's extrapolation error.
Only direction. No, you give us only direction.
I would say
So,
ideas. I give you ideas
Ideas.
based on
Okay.
my experience. But I never position myself as an expert. I have no idea how to do Instagram, honestly. Like if you give me time, like maybe like a couple of weeks, and you give me a team, and we're gonna go do like lots of brainstorming and do stuff. Maybe we're gonna use something which is good enough to ship, and then all the assumptions you made, they would come wrong, and then like, you would learn so much. So unfortunately, you cannot learn this by watching videos or reading a book. It only comes with experience. It only comes when you actually like make mistakes, you acknowledge them, right? So you have this like kind of idea how to build systems, but there
Sounds
is
reasonable.
yeah, there is no book. Like if somebody sells you a book said this is exactly how you do system design, unless you're Martin Fowler, I would say I'm not buying it.
Sounds reasonable. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
All right, so we're almost at 2 hour mark. It's the longest, and I would say that's the best session we got. Like Raj, my intention was just to make you suffer as much as possible.
Yeah, no. Actually, I want anything less would have been not good for me because
Yeah.
it's because I haven't been. I mean, I don't want to sidetrack and waste other people's time, but because I haven't done these interviews for longest time, and it's very. Even though I probably, if I look back at the video, I will probably think, oh, how can you hire this guy? Because what you're thinking and what you're saying out is not same. Yeah, and there's like, unless you practice it, you said it's a different skill set where working and developing product and giving, what do you call, conveying what you are to the interviewer so that he knows how you're thinking and what problems are important. So it's a different skill set, and you probably, because constrained by time, you have to limit every answer and restrict it to 2 or 3 minutes so that we get on with the problem and provide the signals that you're mentioning. Yeah, it was very good for me personally. The more any feedback I get, the better it's for me, because it's very, like you said, there's not many mobile system advanced stuff that you can go and learn from. So it's.
Yep. I really like the speed and date analogy. I think it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, so we're hitting 2 hour mark. If anyone else wants to add
Yeah,
something.
last question, please. Is it how it sounds when you try to minimize the question from the interviewer? What I mean, for example, you asked me about perfection, and I said to you, okay, I can provide you. Let's find the easiest, cheapest solution because we run out of time. Is it correct answer, or it's not really good one? What do you think
I would
about
say
that?
not put it this way. It's that, like, you know what, I'm really a deep expert on the matter, but since we only have such and such time, we're gonna just go and like cut lots of corners. You should justify every decision you make.
Got you.
And
Mhm.
running
Thank you.
out of time might be not a good justification unless you actually facing a firm deadline, which we don't have at the time of the interview.
Okay,
Like I
gotcha.
would say, don't be arrogant. The biggest problem is not, like at least my experience is not that people bring like cheap solutions. The biggest problem, people dodging questions. You ask one thing and they start talking about something else. You bring it back, and it goes back and forth, and they're like, okay, and you just put not signal, no strong signal, whatever. So it's wasted opportunity. Or lots of philosophical discussions about some hypothetical things. Oh, if we really bring up machine learning, we can totally shine. So unless you're ready to discuss machine learning, don't bring it up. So don't just bring stuff up just to look good. You may assume that when an interviewer asks you a problem, they might ask this problem many times in the past, and they might know it pretty well. Worst case scenario, you try to fake knowledge and you got a domain expert. So, like, when you just brought up stuff like, oh, I'm going to be like the sockets, I'm going to be like HTTP2, I'm just going to be using the quick or whatever, and say, okay, let's talk about it. And then apparently, like, you don't have any experience of those things. You just learn about them from internet videos, like blog posts, etc. You have zero experience, and faking experience might not be really well for you. It's better to be honest.
But if you understand that this is solution which you don't work with, but it's better than solution with which you worked before. So what to do in this case? So you understand that pros and cons, pros outweighs the cons of the solution, but you never have experience with this technology.
Then just be honest. Said, you know what? I never work with protobufs, for example.
Okay.
Or I never work outside of just setting up Hello World. But I know that protobufs has like certain advantages over JSON. It's a binary protocol. Like, it's way more compact than JSON. It has schema, so you don't need to parse them yourself, right? And it has amazing backward compatibility.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you bring it this way. So basically, as an interviewer, I have a full confidence if given like 1 or 2 weeks, you can learn how to use protobufs, because you don't need to build protobufs. You just need to find the right libraries, do correct integration, etc. But it's like, oh, we can use protobufs, we can use GraphQL, we can use such and such, and just like throwing buzzwords on top without proper justification. Like, people will say like, oh, we're going to be using GraphQL because it's so awesome. Like, yes, it is awesome when you request a highly customizable, but it comes with a cost, and you need to know exactly what cost you have, like in terms of setting up on the backend, what tools you use, and like what bottlenecks, etc. But not just like throwing stuff on the table.
Thank you.
A good example for Cursor. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Raj has a better insight on this, but I firmly believe that you encode the Cursor ID, the page ID, whatever you call it.
Oh, so I misspoke it. Sorry, yes, I didn't mean to interrupt. I misspoke because the URL has to be encoded, right? The URL, it has to be URL encoded, right? I shouldn't have used the word. I didn't know the cursor could be anything. So I meant to say that whatever the server decides, you'd encode it because it needs to be part of the URL. So I think I took it in the wrong direction by mentioning encode.
Yeah, so they encode it not because they're afraid it's going to be not URL safe. You can always encode it when you send it. Not big deal.
Yeah.
They encode it because they try to hide internal implementation details.
Yeah.
The last thing you want is just to expose your internal database IDs to the outside world, which would be extremely hard when you need to change something. What if attacker can use it in any stuff? This is my perception, how it works. Raj has different perception, but the idea is like, you said something and I perceive it as something else.
Yeah, I should have, like, if you pursued at something else, that's my failure to like
It's
Put it
not
in
it's not
one
your
line.
failure, but it's clearly your problem.
Yeah.
Like if interviewer didn't get it, like what I'm gonna go second guess. Like
Yeah.
imagine you have meeting, interview, meetings, and then you have like 5 minutes to provide quick feedback, and maybe like after that another like half an hour to provide full feedback.
Yeah.
If interviewer is super busy, they're not gonna go and just go and verify all the assumptions. Like,
Yeah.
oh, this interview was last week, and now we need like to provide detailed feedback, and I can see this strange notes. I believe like they kind of didn't explain it well, so I just like put it this way.
Okay.
No one gonna come and say like, oh, you know what? This is not true. We've been there. Raj did really well. No one been there, and no interview is going to be recorded for privacy reasons.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, if interviewer fails, that's your problem.
I think I just thought about it like the like-ish problem because it's interesting. You could always, it could be a little more expensive. I understand it could be edge case and it's not critical for the product, but for as an engineering exercise, you could have it versioned. You start with 0, and when you send it, you increment it and keep it in your database. So, and if the server sends you incremented version like 3, then you know server is the latest one, because you're not depending on the timestamp. You're just emerging the profile, and it's a lot more expensive on the server. But just I remember Vitaly asking it.
Honestly, I don't know a good solution for this, and that's not the whole point of this. Right?
Yeah.
I like stepping back. I never positioned myself as an expert of anything. I'm just very persuasive in the way I speak, which might not necessarily make me correct.
Yeah.
And like if you take my advice and it backfires, that's on you. Like
no, I know you have to explore thing, right? Yeah, I completely get it. Yep.
We're not trying to learn solutions here. We're trying to figure out what's the best way to address this like very biased and complex thing as system design review.
Yeah.
Like your goal is just to be able to prepare for any question they might throw your way. Like anything, because you have very firm understanding how to approach, what to look for, etc. Might not guarantee you success, but at least it's better than nothing.
Yep.
All right. Anyone else? All right. Then I would assume that everything like the rest was perfect. And now
see you tomorrow.
yeah, I'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you, Alex. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.